Hi, classes. I'm just coming here for the second portion of our notes for the Holocaust packet. We have 4 boxes left we still need to talk about, so I just wanted to go through these notes here. Again, if you no longer have your Holocaust packet or if you weren't in school on that Friday, March 13th, I do have a blank Holocaust packet that I posted onto our Google Classroom, but if you don't have a printer at home or you don't have access to something like that, not a big deal. You can always write these in your notebook. Really, it doesn't matter. As long as you write the stuff down, that's what I really care about. So we talked, the first set of notes was just the history, how Hitler rose to power. Then I went through in each box as kind of showing the progression of the Holocaust. So we have the persecution of Jews, how the Jews were rounded up and sent to ghettos. And then from the ghettos, there was this deportation where you are taken from the ghetto and you go onto those cattle cars. We read about that in Night with Ellie. And in those cattle cars, you're deported to a camp. And then our last box there was the concentration camps. So what happens when you are there? So I want to kind of pick up there, and that's what I'm looking at here with the selection at death camps. So I'm looking at breaking it down to 2 parts. We have the initial selection and we have the daily selection. So the initial selection is upon arrival, you are separated by gender. So men to the left, women to the right. You read this in Night. Ellie and his family had to go through this. Generally, children, it doesn't matter their gender, but children who are under like 12 or 13 generally always went with the women. And then older than that, it was, by gender. They went with like their mothers. They would then ask, do you have any special skills? Are you a seamstress? Are you a cook? Are you a welder? Are you like a blacksmith? Something that the Nazis would be able to use your skill for their benefit. And at this point, if you had any luggage, so if you were able to get onto the cattle car and you've arrived, you've gotten off the cattle car here when you arrive at the camp, if you still have any of your luggage, this is the point where it is now taken. Now, they tell you that once you are done in the shower and you get cleaned up, that it'll be waiting for you like in your cabin or in your barrack. That is, again, part of the lie, part of the story, part of like Hitler's brainwashing technique. It is not waiting for you ever. It is taken and it is never returned. There are people who some of the jobs of the people in the camps is their job is to go through this luggage and sort it. And they sort it by obviously any valuables or money that goes in a pile, and food goes in a pile, and clothing and this and that. It's all separated, and some people, that is their job when they get there. At this time, families are separated. Too young, too old, weakened, they are taken to gas chambers and they are killed immediately. Like, they're not going to feed them a meal. They're just going to be taken and killed. Now, if you've passed the initial selection, now you are going in and you will get cleaned up. You will get, like a uniform or clothing that they want you to wear. And then you are given a job and you go about your day, or you go about what they want you to do. Every single day, there's a thing called a daily selection. So what happens between a daily selection? And daily selections, sometimes they're weekly, and sometimes they are going to be daily. It's daily to weekly. So when I say daily selection, they do daily checks, but the selection portion, depending on the camp, is sometimes weekly or a couple times a week. They go before a camp doctor. Generally, they're naked, or the camp guard, And basically, they just take a look at them. If they look like they're emaciated and not healthy, they will go to one side. And then if they're like, oh, yeah, you can work some more, you're still strong, they have them go to another side. And essentially, this would be oftentimes, at least at Auschwitz, Dr. Mengele was one of these camp doctors that you'd have to go before. And he would literally just a flick of his wrist, left or right. And at the beginning, you don't really know which side is the good side, but then as you go on, you'll be able to tell which one you want to be called onto. You read about this at night with Ellie and his dad. They had to experience this too. Oftentimes, this is random, often for no reason at all. You could go to the other side and they could have you killed. If, that's what that word is, if selected, you would go straight to the gas chamber. Okay, so I want to focus on specifically Auschwitz. Why do I choose, of all of the death camps, why do I choose Auschwitz? I choose it because of our March's Reading Month book that we read of Night. So Ellie was in Auschwitz. Okay, him and his dad were there. And so it's just a nice one to, I like to just stay consistent with that camp. We've already read about it in that novel, so let's focus in and talk about it more here as well. So life at the death camp. So when you're going through that processing, so if I've passed the initial selection and I'm like, okay, I will live, they're not going to kill me right away. Then you go through a processing part. And again, you read about this with Ellie, that they had to get shaved and they had to get washed and deloused, and how humiliated he was and how he'd have to run from one barrack to another and grab the uniform. And they switched uniforms because some had super small ones for large people and large people had, small people had super big ones, and shoes didn't fit and belts. And you read about that in the book. But their hair is cut off, their uniforms are given, they're given shoes. And again, no matter the size, and we read about that in our book, they're given an ID number. And that ID number, it is indeed tattooed on their left forearm. They no longer, and this is kind of a way that they're just taking away like their dignity at this point in the process here. They're taking away their identity because they're no longer a name. Now it's just, your name is no value to us. It's not important to us. You're just a number. They're given a blanket, a food bowl. They're assigned a bunk. Sometimes they're given duties within that bunk. They're given jobs of this is what you'll do every day, whether it's moving bricks or working in a garden or cooking. I mean, it doesn't matter. You're given jobs, and that's what you do day in and day out. Life is hard, you guys. Small food rations, they gave them enough to survive and live for about 3 to 6 months. And that's on very, very minimal calories that they would consume. Okay, daily roll call. This was called, they were called to the Appleplats. This was done several times a day. Everyone must be counted, and even the dead must report. So first thing in the morning before you eat, they feed you quote unquote breakfast. But first thing in the morning, they do their roll call. You have to go outside. It could be raining. It could be freezing and snowing. It doesn't matter. You are standing outside for roll call, and they're checking if everyone from your barrack has not been out. Like if they know there's 100 people and there's only like 90 out there, after they've counted you, you all stay. The people counting the SS go inside, hopefully find 10 people who are either too weak or too sick or who have died that night before. And then they eliminate those people, and then they have to, they count, this is the new number, and you can go about your day. They do it again at night because people are off doing a variety of jobs and they want to make sure that no one escaped during the daytime. They do daily selections possibly. You will want to know the difference between these two groups. So some people are given jobs and they are called a capo. Now a capo, this is a Jewish person. And capos were Jews that were put in charge of other prisoners. These people are brutal, they're harsh, they carry whips, and they indeed whip other Jewish people. They treat them badly. Now, you're probably like, well, why would they do that? Why are they hurting their own people and possibly friends or relatives. Well, if you were a capo, you were treated better and you had less of a risk of being killed right away. And so it was giving them a sense of power. And so it's either, be that firm, strong person in charge or have to answer to one of those people. So, and then another group of people, these are called the Sonderkommandos. And the Sonderkommandos also, these are Jewish people, but these are Jews who are put in charge of death. These are the ones who work in the gas chambers. These are the ones who work in the crematoria. Okay, they are given special treatment. Obviously, they're having to do a lot of difficult things all day long. However, after 3 months, they themselves have the same fate. They themselves are killed in the gas chamber, and then someone else puts their bodies into the crematoria and burn them. And a new group will then take over, and it starts just a cycle. They will be there for 3 months. They don't know they're there for 3 months, but they will be there for about 3 months, and then they are killed at another group. Now, we would have this discussion in class if we were together, but after, why only 3 months? You got to think about the fact that if they waited longer than that 3-month time period, they would potentially start talking and sharing that information with others. And of course, human ash fills the air 24/7. The crematorium is constantly on and running. So death. What does death look like? The gas chambers, you generally go underground, so it's walking underground. The condemned, they would listen to music while they file in. So there's like violins or music playing quietly. This is done to try to make it so people are calm and so people are not like panicking as they're doing this. The clothes are removed in an outer room, kind of like a mudroom or a breezeway type thing, when you come in the house. They're told they're going to take a shower. Your clothes are going to be washed. They would sometimes shave off the rest of their hair if their hair has grown back a little bit. They are closed into the shower door. It is a big, heavy steel door. The door is locked. Now, there were Nazi guards that wear gas masks. They dump this chemical, it's called Zyklon B, into the chimney type tube above the chamber. And what Zyklon B is it's a crystallized form. And the crystals, once they come in contact with the air, they create this poison gas. And it will fill that shower room, so to speak, that room that they're in. And death occurs in about 15 minutes. Okay, this is a very slow, this is a painful death. And essentially, they are choking to death. Okay, so our last box is the disposal of the bodies. Now, this is again where the Sonderkommando come in. Their job is to, once everyone has died in the gas chamber, they go into it with gas masks on and they remove the tangled bodies from the chamber. They then hose down the walls and the floors of any type of bodily fluids. They take the bodies, they stack their naked dead bodies on carts. And oftentimes there's like an elevator that takes them to another room. And if there's any hair that's left on their body that is all cut off, it's then washed. And it's actually hung to dry. And they used everything. It was a purpose for this because that hair would, after it was washed and it was dry, would be used to stuff mattresses and pillows. So they actually would use the hair for a purpose. Any gold was removed from their teeth. If you were, to have gotten to this point in your journey and you still had a gold tooth in your mouth, they would rip it off and, would melt it down and they would use it. Bodies are taken to the crematorium. They're shoved into the ovens and they're cremated. The ash, so they would empty the ash out of the crematorium, out of those ovens, and they'd actually use it for fertilizer. And when they had excess, they would sometimes just dig holes and they would dump it into holes, or they would even dump it into like the stream. And you had this constant smell of just like permeating, like burning flesh and burning hair, just all over the camp all the time. So it was not a good life. Life in Auschwitz was difficult. It was long. I mean, we read about this in the book Night. We're going to talk more about all of this this week on one of our Zoom calls. But I did want to just go through the rest of our notes here with you guys and make sure that you guys got this information written down. All right, we will talk more about this soon.